and thank you for joining us at the KDI Election Day Data Room Studio. I'm your host for this brief session, Abiodun Banjoko. I'm here with two great distinguished guests with relevant election experts, and I would like them to just briefly introduce themselves.
My name is Austin Aigbe. I'm here on behalf of the Nigerian Election Situation Room in the Anambra DCI 2025.
Okay, my name is Ugochi Agalaba Iyanrek. I'm the Executive Director for Social and Integral Development Center and also member Mediation Committee for KDI and a member Nigerian Society Situation Room.
Thank you for gracing us these few minutes. So let me start from my right, Ms. Ugochi. Going out on the field since the election process commenced, how would you rate the conduct of the election management body in preparation for these elections and the process so far?
All right, so far I will rate them more than average, right? Starting from the day they released the notice, the information about election, INEC in Anambra State, they've been so responsive, and the process has been participatory to the point where they engage the stakeholders in Anambra State, because we clamored for that stakeholders engagement, also engaging the PWD community that led to the first of its kind establishment and also deployment of 25 sign language interpreter in Anambra State, using Anambra State to test run it. That is to promote inclusion. That's number one. Then again, engaging the traditional rulers and also town union leaders, gatekeepers and the community to promote peace is also commendable by INEC. And also for the security actor, I think they've done a whole lot with respect to ensuring that the whole atmosphere is peaceful. Going by what we experienced here, November 6th election, where there was high level of insecure environment. So if you also check the turnout of today's election, you will see that both INEC, CSOs such as KDI, Nigerian Society Situation Room, and CDEC, and other organizations who've done well when it comes to mobilizing the stakeholders to come out and vote. And that is also what we are experiencing in the field today. So I would say that they've done more than a half when you talk about from a scale of 1 to 10. I think we've done more than 6, and I would say that that's a good remark.
Okay, thank you. Let me come to you, Austin. I think based on what Ugochi spoke about INEC doing fairly average on it, I just want you to touch on the role of INEC a bit and speak more to regards to the security conduct of the election. We know that the police came out and said they deployed way above 45,000 to 55,000 security operatives for these elections. Going around during the field, did you see the presence of the police?
Thank you very much. Yes. In fact, that was a very good question. Yes. But from what observers deployed across the state have said, there seems to be a huge number of deployment of the police, particularly in the city center, Oka South specifically. You go to certain polling units, you see massive deployment, even more than the threshold. You are going to see police in one of those community halls, Uroma, over 15 police. And before we left there, another 10 joined. That's about 25 police in a polling station. I mean, that is really remarkable. But elsewhere, as you continue to go out of the city center, the number of police deployment begin to drop. That's although you can't say I didn't count 45,000 or over 45,000 that the police deployed. I couldn't count that. But importantly, and what is important and very valid, is that for INEC, it is important to state that whatever happened in Anambra today is because of the peaceful nature of the poll. If you saw election in 2017 and you saw election in 2021, you would definitely want to give the Nigerian police and the people of Anambra State a general assessment that goes beyond a pass mark. Yeah. I say this because there is a peace. I mean, the serenity is so quiet. Unlike the Anambra we know, in the last 8 years election, I mean, talking about the off-cycle elections, I'm not talking about the general elections. In the off-cycle election, governorship election 2017, it was vote and die. That was literally the fake news that was trending. In 2015, even those that were giving money for to move material from one place to the other. That's the transport union. They eventually renegotiated that money of the election, and they disrupted the electoral process, and that's what led to the lowest ever recorded turnout in Nigeria political landscape. Another election recording about 10% of turnout. That's weird, and we expect that with this peace what we saw today, with the serenity, we hope that there will be an increase in the turnout. But again, it is the people, the Indian Anambra, that owns the praise, because they are the ones who did not have to spread fake news. Again, because certain actors, including SEDEC, did a lot of advocacy, went to the markets to mobilize people to stop violence, stop spreading of fake news. Those kind of things added to the value that you see today.
Thank you very much, also, for that feedback. I think it's really important to emphasize that civil society actors have also contributed heavily to the peaceful process of this election. And one last word, what are some of the things that you will be looking out for, Madam Ugochi, with regards to as we head to the collation of results? One, in just 1 or 2 minutes, what are the things you are looking out for ahead of collation?
All right, so what we look out for, because this is the peak period, and all this is also a period where we see some level of violence, right? So as we've experienced very peaceful process over the days, and also from morning till now, we've not really had anything with respect to violence. So this is a collation time. Please, we urge the Anambra citizens, please, let's also ensure that this process is so peaceful. Let's maintain the peace that we've experienced. That's what we want to see. Then also, as we say, vote, sit, and protect your mandate. Ensure that your mandate is being protected. On the part of INEC, we really want, as you promised, that IREF, every report will be uploaded through the IREF. We hope to see IREF that is functional. We hope to see process that is so electronical that people at the comfort of their home zones, they can also follow through the process of result collation. The era of a technical glitch, really, as we've not really experienced it from morning till now, we don't want to experience any technical glitch whatsoever. Any form of violence, riot, we don't really want to see it. We want to see a conclusive, peaceful, credible, fair, free, and inclusive election as overall.
Thank you, Ma, for that last words. Austin, let me move to you. Your last words, as we head into collation. What advice do you have for the party agents that will be at the collation level, from the ward to the local government, to the various local governments, and in addition to the party agents, what would you advise the security agencies to do as we head to collation?
Thank you. Right now, most polling units are already counting, and most of them are already announcing their polling unit results. Party agent, this is where your role matters, because it's about this time that you need to be able to collect the pink copy of the result sheet. As political party, you have a responsibility to take that sheet and pass it on to the collation point, so that when you think that that's the only way you can follow the results. So if you don't collect it, even when you are losing in this election, still collect it, because it matters. And above all, in the Anambra, stay watchful, protect your vote, go on the IRF and check the results of your polling unit, that it matches the one that you saw at the polling unit. If it doesn't match, report to KDI.
Thank you very much, Madam, for gracing us this impromptu and short interview. We are grateful for honoring our invitation.
Thank you, Biodo, for
very
having
much,
us.
Austin. Thank you, viewers, and it's great to have you here at the KDI Election Day Data Room Studio. It's a pleasure. Follow us, like us on social media, keep engaging with us, visit us in the studio as we engage. Thank you and have a lovely day.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, and thank you.
I thought I was wrapping up.
Today, just like you have said, you saw people selling items, not votes, opening shops. I think we want you people to do more advocacy on that so that people can vote at their time, and also not considering that somebody needs to keep you at home. And then you say, I will not go and cast a vote, and you are at home without any reason. You also have that consciousness that it is your right to go and vote, so you don't be afraid of anybody. And activities will go, business will start, revenue will enter into the market as more as maybe we are requesting. Because one day when you miss a business for one day, it's also a loss to the country. Please, I have seen it. It's a good thing that we have started. And even the security men are happy that there is no problem in the election. So we will also, like I said, we are calling on you people, the NGOs, to help us sensitize the people, create more awareness so that the workload on the security personnel will be reduced. Thank you. That's just what I have to say.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. We are grateful, sir. We just crave your indulgence. Maybe, sir, before you go, we can take picture with your team before we go. Thank you.
you, Jesus. Thank you. It's entering. What happened before? Alpha. How are you? How are you? Okay, it's up now.
to observe the 2025 governorship elections here in Anambra. At the start of the day, we um, went out as a team to observe the process of the elections. We visited a couple of polling units in Ward 9, Ekponu Ward precisely, and we had on the ground assessment of the election day proceeding. And it's interesting to note that um, we arrived earlier on to make sure we were able to get a proper view of the start of time for the election. In most of the places visited, election officials were observed to arrive on time. However, there were challenges with the arrival of the security agencies. And in most places, the electoral officials hesitated to commence the processes pending the arrival of the security agencies. So that sort of delayed the start of in several polling units. But overall, between 8:30 to 9:15, most polling units we were started up the accreditation and the voting process. There were little glitches here and there with the initial use of the beavers, but with time it improved. More so where they were able to switch from the use of fingerprint to facial identification. And even for the facial identification, they had to identify locations that enhanced the usage of the beaver. I think overall we saw a very efficient use of the beavers, which took an average of 2 to 3 minutes and facilitated the process of the voting in record time. Some of the concerns we noted were the sparse distribution of security agents. Contrary to the initial statement by the police hierarchy that an average of 3 police or security personnel will be deployed to each of the polling units, I think we had an average of 1, and in some places there were no security agents on site altogether. I think that um, a kind of gave the party agents a kind of leeway to have domineering influence over the process. In several polling units, as a matter of fact, we saw polling agents taking charge of the entire process, controlling the flow of the voting processes, and in most cases, influencing the decisions of the voters. This inevitably enhanced the prospect of vote buying, where we saw a deliberate, systematic outlay um, involving voters displaying their marked ballot sheets and being tailored, being guided to some distant location where they are being rewarded. That was a process we observed in practically all the units that were visited, and we feel that is an incredible dent on free, fair, and credibility of the electoral process. Um, some of the other challenges we observed were the fact that there wasn't adequate enthusiasm among the electorate. The turnout was incredibly low, and so many electorates were preferred to open their stores or move around than to actually participate in the voting process. And we feel this decline uh, is a worrying trend that needs to be reversed. Um, it will appear as if citizens have really not felt the impact of governance sufficiently to influence their decisions to participate in the elections on election day. We also saw in some areas where the accessibility to the polling units were a little bit challenging. Uh, Perhaps this might be because those polling units were not earmarked for as places that needed accessibility. But I think there should be a minimum standard that will allow for the participation of every eligible voter in the process. So that um, we saw needed more attention to be paid to in some places where we visited. I think generally we saw situation where um, individual voters, you know, were eager to ensure that whatever they voted for counts at the end of the day. And I think this falls into the narrative that whatever their decisions are in terms of voting preference might not reflect at the end of the day. And I also think this further fuels the challenge of voter apathy that we're seeing. So I think going into the conclusion of the vote, the counting of the votes, and the triangulation with the polling unit, uploading of the results, and then the coalition, I think there should be greater transparency as a way of endearing trust, greater trust among the citizens on the outcome of the elections reflecting their voting preference. That will a great deal enhance the prospect for voter turnout in subsequent elections. This again will be reinforced by um, government delivering on the dividends of democracy, which I think is a major catalyst for the voter apathy that we are seeing. If we see greater economic impact in the life of people, then there would be a greater prospect of people coming out or turning out to vote on election day. We were so close to the university, and I think one of the challenges we heard was uh, many persons registered on campus, and then on election day they are out of campus. So that again shuts them out from participating in the process. With respect to tension, I think for the places where we visited, despite the scantiness of the police or the security agencies, voters were peaceful, they were orderly, they were organized to an extent. And in places where the beavers read and recorded quickly, there was a fast flow of the process, and it eased any possible tension that could come up. So generally, the atmosphere and the environment was very peaceful, and there was convivial environment for people who related, regardless of their partisan disposition. We also saw um, major or the leading parties, including the ruling party and the leading opposition in the state, deploying more party agents. So I think the ABGA led, and then the APC, and then the YPP in terms of the deployment of party agents. And I think this is also critical to ensure that parties have their eyes on the process, and that the individuals they are deploying are also equipped with knowledge on the process to ensure that they do not interfere unnecessarily to the extent of hampering on the processes of the election. So I think the clarion call will be for political parties to up their game with respect to training, voter education, and generally for those who eventually get into position of authority, justify the efforts of citizens who have come out to vote for them by ensuring that the dividends of democracy is provided for the people as a stimulant for them to participate in future elections. Thank you very much.
With 170 million papers, 140,000 journals, and millions of patents, Boreum gives you
from our situation room, it's just 28 cases, 28 pockets there. And when you look at 20...
What's the nature of this?
So number one, you have just like group clash, intimidation by some of the, and harassment by some of the, party agents. And you also have, in particular place, a case where the security man was, due to his overzealousness, wounded, released the tear gas and then wounded an observer. So when you look at that, it's just a pocket of those things. And so even if it happened in 28 polling units, compared to 5,718 polling units, you find out that, look, the police and the security agencies have actually done well. But my major concern, again, is that we also to look at, in terms of the police deployment. So, and I think bringing 45,000 people, force men into this state is why it's commendable. But I think going forward, it's working by this. Going forward, one of the things we would like to also see is that deployment framework strategy, because you get to some places you see 2, you get to some places you say 3, you get to some places you say 1. And at the same time, what's that figure? For accountability's sake, we need to begin to look at that figure entirely. Because even if you look at 3,000, multiply by 5,718 polling units, you still cannot get 45,000. So, and you keep wondering, where are the rest?
Yeah,
so,
that's an empirical question that Achike asked before he left here. I know you were nodding. You wanted to answer some of the things he said.
Well, the question about the police. So, yes. I stopped asking those questions. Where are they? Because there are intelligence background to this conversation. Okay. You may see 20 police officers in uniform in the particular polling unit. There may actually be about 50 there, but you can't identify them. I'm not saying there could not be some underneath. The police understand this. So, and don't also forget, while we talk about this deployment of police, over 45,000 is worrisome. In the Situation Room statement yesterday, it was evident that the deployment is worrisome and it needs to be checked. But if you were here in 2021, you would not talk about that number, because you needed those numbers to be able to show some kind of show of force that happened in this state on Thursday. A show of force, the military and all of those, trying to show that we are ready to enforce rules and to enforce that criminals don't interfere. Don't forget that this state borders other states and is a standalone. Those questions continue to come. How do we do a standalone election so that people from Delta State don't gain access to Anambra State, for instance? In a dual election, it was about the same number of deployment. Meanwhile, that's just the police. We're not talking about the DSS. They have their own deployment. You saw them in blacks and with their gun movement and all of that. But you also have the road safety. You have the civil defense, all of those. So at the end of the day, do we really need all of these? I also worry when we waste state resource in conducting an election. If this election goes and the number of turnout is less than 20% or even less than 40%, just like you have in the Nigerian election, general election that saw the President Buhari election in 2023, where about less than 30% turned out to vote. The waste of ballot papers is something that we need to begin to interrogate. If you talk about police deployment, fine. Maybe this personnel that were deployed earned some pay. Yes, it may become some kind of waste because it has an advantage. It also has its own disadvantage. Because if you see 45,000 police coming to Anambra, the fear could actually cause people not to come out to vote. That's on one side. But it can also increase the confidence that the electoral system and the security architecture in the state will be enhanced and that could be safe. So where do we stand in either of this? But for off-cycle election, it's worrisome. You need to be clear of those border communities and ensure that they are well policed. Those numbers, police will never tell you that there is this person in plain clothes is a police person, but this person in uniform
A lot of them came in 2 days ago from Abia State, from Enugu State. They moved in with their uniform. You could see them. But there's also low police deployment outside of the city center. From what observers are bringing in to the situation room. In certain other areas, they say that the polling unit, no. In fact, one of the candidates, let me not mention candidate name, one of the candidates in the particular polling unit, there was no police personnel. Maybe that's the reason why the candidate didn't show up early. He had to wait until such a time. So going back to waste, if in this election, 2.8 million registered voters, and I'm sure INEC could have printed 3 million ballot papers, and the turnout is less than maybe 1 million, it means we will waste about 2 million ballot papers. What is that telling us for cost of elections? It's worrisome for me. So is it not this time part of electoral reform that KD and Situation Room, everybody is working towards, to be able to think of reduction in how to do things that INEC, the former INEC administration had seen into the future. In Jega's administration, the smart card was introduced and it played its role. Today, with the aid of the beavers, integrity in the election is coming in. And people argue that the beavers machine has been able to remove ghost voters. Wherein many years ago, we used to, like it was saying just a few minutes ago, those days where you have votes coming in late are the rural communities, where before you know what's happening, the way politicians do it, they'll be asking, which one has come in? Okay, you want to increase the one that will later come in to outnumber the one that has come in earlier. So they're no longer doing the rural community, they're not doing the urban community. Is there a reason for that? Like I said, we need to study and interrogate those interfaces. But beyond that, it's electronic voting system that matter now. I'm not talking about internet voting. Because when people hear about electronic voting, no, they will hack the system. They are not hacking the beavers results. The result of the Form EC8A is uploaded. It's difficult to pull down a PDF document or a JPEG document and change the data. It cannot happen. The only thing you can do is to shut down the system, maybe having what they call glitches. Aside that, it's a difficult terrain. But beyond that, people talked about all manner of mechanism with which you can transmit. But that's not where we are now. But we must begin to think about, in an election, in a country that usually will be boring every now and then, do we need to still be spending these huge resources in our election? These are questions. And maybe just to quickly also state that even though the party agent, because I see the role of party agent, because sometimes you will ask, what are the party agents doing? I think at this time, we should begin to hold political parties also accountable. You don't go ahead to challenge results, maybe like... I want you to hold that thought in just a moment. I'll come back to it because it's quite important that we have 16 political parties participating in this election. Where I covered, when it was announced, the INEC official, the polling unit officer was asking, where are the agents? I was watching to see, as at that time, I don't think I saw any agent. And then tomorrow, but I'll come back to both of you on this agents matter and other issues as well. But just to tell our viewers that we're looking at the portal, the IREF portal. This is just to praise INEC for what they are doing. When they do well, we appreciate them.
Yes.
From what I'm seeing here, about 89% or so of the results have so far been uploaded. So let me give the exact number. Out of the 5,720 as listed by INEC as the number of polling units, 5,109 of those results have so far been uploaded. Of course, upload may be there, but it's not completed. So there are different series in terms of...
I've also seen firsthand how a simple health intervention can save a child's life and how knowledge can empower an entire community, ensuring that everyone has the chance to live a healthy life. But we need more hands and more hearts.
Polling units to know exactly whether it's what was announced that you're seeing.
Yes.
The reason I had to do this and come back to you, let me start from him too. Okay, since I were with you before I come to Mr. Do. I was asking, I think, one of the observers, I said, a situation where the party agent has a couple of responsibilities. First, to observe the process that is fair. In fact, under, I think, Section 60 or so of the Electoral Act, he has the power to ask for a recount at least once if he's not confident that the sorting and the recount was properly done. It's according to law, he has the power to recount. So when there is no enforcer of the compliance of the process or from a political party is a concern, then there's a part of counter-signing. So when you have 16 political parties and you see maybe one or two, what happens if a party that is not present has votes? That's a question for both of you. Fantastic question. That is why I said as at this time we have to start calling out political parties who will later go on media doing media shopping to be telling people that I would have won. That's why something happened. We are told a few minutes ago that one of the candidates stepped down. It may have been that the candidate deliberately put that story out so that he can use that after the poll. What do I mean? Like you said, the major in most of the polling units you can say about 5, 4, 3, majorly 2. What does that tell? Tomorrow, you are going to tell me that you won in an election where you did not deploy up to 20-40% of party agents. You should not even begin to speak if you do not have the capacity to deploy that 5,000 plus party agents, because you need to do your own tabulation. What they do as PVT is the role of political party. You have the responsibility as party agent to observe the process, like you said, take the result back to your party. The party does your own tabulation. Where there's discrepancies between what INEC has reported, you can then flag that, because there's another dimension to that, because results can still be cancelled at collation points. If there are malfeasance in the course of the way from EC8 is written and there's a lot of issues, and you take it back to carry it to the World Collation Center, the return officer can actually query to say, man, I don't understand this your paper. If there's no tally, for instance, you are issued 20,000, maybe 200 ballot papers, and suddenly you came back with 1, and the number of ballots used is 10. So where are the other numbers? If you cannot agree, they can put on the form and say none and void. Meanwhile, your party would have taken that result to go and be calculating, but you have an agent at that collation center who will then say that, man, party unit 8 as the council, please delete off from this tabulation. So the INEC result should truly agree with party tabulation if they observe the process adequately.
Mr. Do, your take on this. I know you have a lot to say.
So I look at this in 4 different ways.
Okay.
One, and there are 4 components you have to look at when it comes to this issue of party agents. Number 1, let's first of all start with data. What the data is saying is that if you are going to have the 16 political party having agents in all the 5,720 polling units, you are looking at like over 90,000 party agents. So which means in each of the polling units, you are supposed to have 16 party agents. So you will be looking at over 90,000 party agents. However, the data from INEC says only 67,000 are the party agents that the political party put forward. So when you do the tabulation, let's now say we are going to distribute them evenly or equally across the political party, across the polling unit. So which means you are going to have 11 to a political party according to what they supply. So you are going to have 5 political party who doesn't have party agent at all. However, that is not it, because you can't distribute it evenly. You only have 1 political party that have 98% deployment of party agents. You have 2 political parties that have like about 80% deployment. The rest, you also have 10. In some instances, people are contesting election, no party agents anywhere. So that tells you, number 1, is the seriousness of those people contesting. Now, even if you cannot pay them, what about the people that believe in you, that believe in your manifesto, that they will want to volunteer? And I keep saying it until you begin to put some of these parameters in place. People will begin to use election as a means of enhancing their CV as a former governorship candidate. Meanwhile, you are not a serious contender. That is one. Then you also have to look at the commercial, the financial angle of this. What it means is that even if you are going to deploy what is it called, party agents now into 5,720 polling units at 2,000. If you are giving them to 2,000, you just talked about the cost of election. That comes to who? To the party or to the candidates. So you look at that cost. It's huge. So which means on your own, you must make budget for 5,720 party agents for you to be able to
have your eyes everywhere.
To have your eyes everywhere. That is a lot of money. However, and that is why some people say, look, the money that goes into election is either you are in power or you are in one of the strong party that will be able to compete favorably. Because this alone can push you away.
Does cost already disenfranchise chance?
Cost already disenfranchise a lot of people.
Why?
So how are you? Okay, so that is it. So the issue here is that number one, you have culturally the practice and the habit of volunteerism is off. Nobody wants to volunteer. In the US, people volunteer to be agents. To say they volunteer. In fact, to volunteer, they contribute resources on their own. Build resources on their own. So this, you don't have it. So you want me to be agent, you must pay me. Okay. The same mentality that says, look, you want my vote, you must buy it. It's the same thing.
We're going to come to that vote buying conversation yet again because it's a recurrent decimal. But we'll go on this quick break. I still have continue.
On to channelstv.com. Click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere. Modern lifestyle requires a lot of energy, backed up by intense production processes, which impact the environment in more ways than one.
The world has realized that you cannot deal with climate change without looking at loss of biodiversity.
On Echo Africa, nature speaks and the discerning mind becomes champion of sustainable living.
One thing we want to do is to change public behavior around recycling.
What Echo Africa?
Nollywood Uncut, every week at these times.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the Anambra State governorship election. We're broadcasting from Oka, the Anambra State capital. The voters have done their part in deciding who they've chosen. The verdict is in. INEC has one responsibility to announce the verdict of the people. We've seen numbers from IRF that
Close to 90% of the polling unit results have now been uploaded. So all attention, all eyes will now shift to the State Collation Center, where the local government returning officers will file out in their sequence, 21 of them, to announce what happened in their local government. And then the returning officer in the state will make that eventual announcement as to who won today's election as far as the governorship election. But my guest still seated here, Mr. Austin Aigbe, a Situation Room Analyst, and Bukola Edowu, also Situation Room Analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Let me come to you. I know it was landing on his thought, but you continue well so that he has a chance to talk. You know, it feels, because we're still talking about money here, funding, party agents and all of that, and the inability of some party agents, of political parties, to be able to have an issue like they've lost because they don't have the capacity to fund putting their persons in place. And he talks about volunteerism, which is perhaps not a culture here anymore. That could have scaled down the cost. But let's expand it to the voters. Someone had told me, someone high up there, had said one day, and it was quite instructive, but I'm beginning to see it. It feels like when it comes to election,
was moving to another, you had a budget. You had discussed all the consequences, all of the issues, and you also have maybe what we call contingency in case the unseen is not noticed on the way. If you do a D- plan, you should be able to see whatever on the way as you are going. But just, I think, like he said, very correct. Most politicians are beginning to contest elections for negotiation reasons. That I contested with you. Some do that to be able to sit on the table on the day of sending peace accord, so they are able to see who they can negotiate with, like a networking session. Why would you get involved?
I've never heard that before.
Why would you get involved in a game that you? I mean, when I saw the data in KDI's office, where they were looking at tracking of campaign finance, that one of the candidates had not spent 1,500 naira. For Christ's sake. You see, why do you have to add to the number to be 16? Can we that's why I think that is important.
Say what you said again. I think I missed it. What did you say?
1,500 naira.
Is what? What does that?
Campaign finance for this candidate. Let's not mention names.
No, you won't. I won't let
1,500 compared to the other that I spent about.
Is a typographic
there is a data that shows.
Katie, is true?
Yes.
That is true.
We
track campaign finance, and then that is it.
So there's another candidate who has spent about 2 billion. The one who has spent 2 billion may have had, you can say they had more resource at its disposal. Fantastic. But you don't have the resource at your disposal. So why are you putting the burden on the state? You will see those same political actors, they'll be blaming INEC for not doing voter education. Those parties, the parties are responsible for voter education. You are talking about parties. What's party? They are people full of members. So why can't the members sit in their polling unit? I mean, for INEC to register a political party, there are names they will supply across the federation. They are more than the number we are talking about. See, when we talk about election all over the world is expensive. I don't want to, even SUG election now is becoming very expensive because most of them want to wear their title. You know, I like this country where we use His Excellency very freely. You use honorable. In fact, some are even right honorable. I haven't lost election like 5 times.
You came with a jab today.
No, it's painful because we have to begin to deal with these issues. And there need to be some very good hammer. You have to pass processes. That is why when you look at independent candidate, you earn yourself on the ballot. You earn yourself on the ballot because there have to be certain individuals who need to sign you to the ballot. You don't do because you're a member of a political party, because again, that's our jurisprudence. You can contest election. Once the party feed you, that's fine. Whether the people feed you or not is immaterial. And then we are going to see that over in majority of the polling units, less than 10 political parties could not measure up. In fact, if not more, because right now we cannot get it. We don't have the data at our disposal. It's important to nip those in the bud. You don't push the cost of election to the state when you have the responsibility to do same.
You know, he's fired from all cylinders, and I think he knows who is directing his thoughts to. But it's not about the burden on the states, because ballot papers have been printed. The state has spent money. Sometimes there's an obligation to these political parties. And you use the word like it's a networking session. The reason why we're saying all of this is because when you come out to say you want to contest, people emotionally invest in you. What does that do to this? What do you think? On one hand, you're thinking everybody has a right to vote and be voted for. On the other hand, it's expensive. So where do we strike this balance?
So I think we need to, it's part of the electoral reforms that we need to begin to look at, and then we have to now begin to see how we reduce the cost of our election. You see, you are only talking about the cost of INEC. You are not talking about the cost that the police used to deploy 45,000 men into this place. Many of them brought out from various states, neighboring states, who are going to get out of state allowance. You have to look at that is police. We have not talked about civil defense. We have not talked about the DSS and the rest. Then you also have to look at the cost of procurement, for the election. Then what about the cost, the alternative for gun? And what is the alternative for gun? Because when you are having an election, you shut down everywhere. So some people will not be able to sell. They also lost. That is a cost to them too. So you have to also look at a whole lot of things involved. But what do we need to do? We need to begin to look into electoral reform. And most importantly, one thing that we need as a reform urgently is our attitude as a nation. Do you also know that nationally, I don't even have to have an agent there when there is a trust, when we have an attitude that, look, nobody will steal my vote, that my vote is going to count. I don't even need to have an agent there. It's lack of trust that you need an hide there, you need an hide there. So we need, that is one area I have to look at. And in fact, when you talk about that cost, you also have to extend it to the cost you use on litigation, the judiciary. So, but in all, what I am trying to say now is that to round it off is that we have to also change our attitude, both from the government and the citizen.
Excellent point you've raised, and the passion that has been put into this is clear that we all want this thing to work. There's another part of the conversation we didn't even get to. Maybe I'll talk to it with other guests. That has to do with what is going on now in terms of the collations. And remember what fell out of the Edo State governorship election. This hour.
Around this time.
It is this hour. This is the hour has come. The hour. I call it the calm before the storm. So anybody who misses this moment is gone. But I must thank you both. Austin Aigbe, Situation Room Analyst, Bukola Idowu, Situation Room Analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's our continuing coverage of the Anambra State governorship election live from Oka, the Anambra State capital. We still have loads of conversation more for you. So review the process. Collation is ongoing, but the center, the State Collation Center, as soon as it opens, we'll let you know. But for now, we're just following through what is being uploaded on IRF as those results make their way to the state capital in Oka. But we'll be back after this break. Join us again.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com. Click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.
Warm welcome to our house. I'm Melinda. Coming up on today's episode of program. Life is a stage. A bold canvas. Splash some paint on it. String some rhymes while at it.
election observation hub that comprise of the following organizations: Yaga Africa, the Kuka Center, the International Press Center, the Center for Media and Society, CIMESO, the Nigerian Women Trust Fund, Elect Her, TAF Africa, supported by the European Union under the Support to Democratic Governance project, jointly deployed 711 citizens observers across the 21 local governments of the state. Nevertheless, voters conducted themselves in a peaceful and orderly manner, reflecting a commendable level of political maturity and commitment to democratic principles. While it is too premature to provide exact turnout rates, our preliminary observation from the partners indicate low voter turnout across local government areas and several local government areas. And as noted in all the pre-election statements that each partner has issued, the apathy witnessed in the build-up to the election appears to have manifested in low turnout on election day.
Welcome back. Our continuing coverage of the Anambra State governorship election is not over. They say until it's over. The reason is because INEC has not announced the final result of the election, and the collation center gets yet to open. Channels Television is on ground live right here, which is where we're broadcasting from as far as this election is concerned. So we'll get to that collation center, the state collation center, as soon as it opens, to bring you live updates as proceedings kick off right there. But for now, we're reviewing the entire process, looking at all the stakeholders, because it's a multi-stakeholder exercise. Election is a big deal. There are so many moving parts, and one of those parts is security. We have with us right here in our studio in Anambra the Commissioner of Police in charge of this election, CP Abayomi Shogunle. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me again.
And we may have you again. I also have Mr. Jake Pele, the founder of TAF Africa. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
So, CP, there are so many. It appears what everybody has agreed about on this particular election is that it's been peaceful. So,
Jumia Black Friday is here because Jumia's biggest deals are about to drop on everything from phones and electronics to clothes, beauty products, and so much more. Download the Jumia app now.
We'll talk about the issue of the Dunbar deployment and some of the implications. But what did you observe from a policing point of view as far as this election is concerned?
Well, thank you very much for that. You could see me beaming with smiles because these are actually what we were expecting. And simply, I would just summarize these as intentional outcomes. It took 6 months of planning, strategic planning, to get to where we are today. So what we have seen today is not by chance. These are elements of planning and collaboration with all stakeholders, including INEC. And that is what has brought us to where we are today. So simply put, is strategic planning.
So was there any incident anywhere, no matter how minor?
Despite the fact that there's always a margin of error of 0.5 points or something, generally there is nothing to say that this election has not been peaceful, because there has been almost zero level of incidents that was reported. And looking at the turnout again, by the time the full statistics, the full figures are out, this will definitely be the election with the highest number of turnouts in the history of Anambra State.
Do you think this peaceful, this peace that we're celebrating, or this outcome we're celebrating is based on the effort of the police or just the docility of, let me use that word carefully, just the people not just being interested as much as they should be, because there were complaints to the fact that there were a lot of police presence in the city centers and some other places there were not that much presence, but they didn't record that maybe any form of incident.
You see, just as I've said, what we are seeing now, these are intentional outcomes. We planned for it to be like this, and that's why we are having it, or we are getting this result. We put in certain measures in place to make sure that we arrive at this point we are, and that is why we are at this point we are. And this happened based on strategic planning, collaboration with stakeholders, including INEC and all the security agencies. We marshal out plan that we want to achieve this, and for us to achieve this...
You've talked about plan. You've mentioned plan a couple of times. What was the plan?
The plan is to have a peaceful election. And for that to happen, we needed to put certain things in place. We started putting these things in place physically like 3 months ago, including the clearance of the pre-election clearance operation we had that ended just 1 or 2 days to the election. We were able to identify those that will cause problem, and we removed them from circulation, and that's why we are here. The citizens saw this, they felt, not only seeing, they felt the atmosphere of peace, and that's why we saw a lot of people coming out to vote. And again, that's the reason why we have recorded close to 0 negative incidents in any polling unit.
So what was the strategy here? Was it, permit me to use the word for lack of any word that I'm trying to remember, was it about over-militarization, show of force with 45,000, or it was something else? Because if you did your work, first, we have commended you, and because we want to see how we can build on what has happened here in subsequent elections, so that we get to an election where we don't even need to deploy as much as this is.
Well, the truth is, based on, because each time people try to make this comparison, that in some climes they even go for election on working days, nothing, you don't know you don't know where the election is taking place. These are 2 different conditions. Certain indices or variables make certain things to happen. And talking about what are the plans, I will just refer you to what we call the path triangle. That's the problem analysis triangle. For you to achieve a desired result, because when it comes to issue of incidents, there is the perpetrator, there is the offender, then there is also the guidance. There is the victim, there is the perpetrator, and there is the introduction of guidance. And we have been able to do 2 things here. We've introduced more guardianship. Those are the police security forces that were visible. And just as you have stated, these officers were visible in particular areas where we know that threat could come up. And just as you have said, they were less visible in some areas because we were not expecting certain things in those areas. Then coming about the perpetrators, another thing we have been able to do, we have been able to remove the perpetrators from circulation. So the victims or the potential victims, the electorate are there. The perpetrators that will come and disrupt, they have been removed. There's no way, through lawful means, so there's no way they could come and disrupt the elections. Some of the things they would have used to disrupt the elections have been recovered and taken away from them. And that is what we are seeing today. Maybe off camera, I might share some with you, but in the public, we want to keep it to ourselves.
It sounds brilliant. It sounds to me like intelligence-driven policing. That's what it rings in my head. But before I go to Mr. Afele, is there a reason for 45,000?
You see, this issue of 45,000, I gave these figures last week during a meeting at the INEC headquarters in Abuja. That was the initial plan. Along the way, data is not static. It could go up, it could go down. Along the way, other security agencies came up with their strengths, which we added, which you have seen during the course of this election. So it is even beyond the 45 you are talking about. And I'll tell you the reason for this. We have over 5,720 polling units. And under the INEC guidelines, we should have at least 3 police officers in each polling unit. Calculate times 5,720 by 3, you get the figure. Then the number of collation centers that we have again in the states, calculate that. We have to secure all these collation centers. Then that's from the ward level before you get to the local government level, then before the state level. Then again, we have several states bordering Anambra State. We needed to check the inflow, both things coming in and going out, at least 1 week before the election. We have strategic police locations with men in all these places. Again, we have to provide adequate security for the ad hoc staff. INEC has deployed thousands of staff to carry out this election. We have to protect all these people. And based on that, we need a significant number of officers to do this. And thank God it has worked, and those are the results we are seeing.
Great points. Great. Mr. Pele, the way you've been smiling sounds like you're impressed with what you're hearing. Maybe let me allow you just say what's on your mind.
Well, I'm particularly impressed, and congratulations, CP. It's relatively peaceful, and I must commend your men that I met, some of them that I met. They were very cordial and professional. I remember going out, I told you, I went out, just to look at the movement, the vehicular movement and all that. And many of them I met at the checking point without even introducing myself. The moment they saw this, they just opened, we passed. So that's commendable. However, I still have problems with the number of security police men that we deploy in an election. Some of those numbers can be very intimidating. And you look at the taxpayers' money that is spent in that huge number. Because you won't tell me that allowances were not paid. You will not tell me that they were not fed. You will not tell me that they were not inconvenienced. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying the time has come for us to begin to see how we can trim the number and still get the result that we got today. I think this is one of the most off-cycle election that's been peaceful. Two things played out in this election, apart from, and PC, I don't agree with you when you say the voter turnout is good. Voter turnout is not good. I'm nitty-gritty in observing this election.
Maybe it's CP's assessment is, was it peaceful?
From the security point. Yes.
It's not turnout that is
I was going to tell him, please don't go there. Let's focus on your strength, Truth be told, I don't know whatever strategy you used, please share it with other CPs in the forthcoming off-cycle election, because it worked, But my criticism about number is not particular to this election. It's general. The number of security operatives we deploy in a given election is too much and too expensive. Can we begin to do and implement strategies that will limit this number, yet we get even better result that we're getting today?
Is it a police problem or a citizen's problem to be able to be peaceful so that police doesn't deploy as heavy as it should?
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. It is not police problem. It is the citizens. There's no doubt. But sometimes, Jeff, these issues are exaggerated. Sometimes. And I'm not being very relative to your situation. I'm talking about generally, Let's take for instance, there was no presence of police in River State local government election, and yet there were very few incidences. So it shows me that election can actually be managed with limited security implication, and you get good results. You will not tell me, CP, that all the 45,000 or 50,000 you deployed, all of them participated, all of them were part of this. Some of them were probably sitting somewhere sleeping.
No, that's
okay. But
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain when you're in the zone. But getting in the
recent election that
Okay, let me come back to CP. So CP here, I guess, is trying to say is that I don't think anybody can take it away. Police did a great job in this election.
Yes.
I'm here, I've seen,
yes,
at least for myself. We've heard the reports, we've not heard anything. So that's why I was asking, it sounds to me like more of intelligence-driven policing. But, you know, we're using state resources to be able to put this together to make sure we have this peaceful exercise. That's why I threw in to say, is it a police problem or a citizen's problem? But is there a sense in when people raise objection to significant deployment of police for off-cycle election? Do you see what they are saying?
You see, the thing is, most of these comments are coming from the point of view or the knowledge that people making this have. We are inside. We know what it is. The interest during local government election is completely different from interest in a governorship election. The same thing, the interest in the House of Assembly election is completely different from National Assembly election, and so forth like that. The interest during general election is different from the interest during off-cycle election. Just like the interest during midterm election in the U.S. is different from the interest during the general election. Now, this is an off-cycle election. It's happening only in one state. Almost everybody in Nigeria is interested in off-cycle elections. People come in from different parts of the country to come and vote in off-cycle elections. People come in from different parts of the country because of certain interests they have in off-cycle election, because that's the only election taking place. Unlike general election, where everybody will face their particular state where they are interested in, it's like nobody moves from state A to state B during general election. But in off-cycle elections, it's not like that. So that means
So are you saying there's more danger in off-cycle election?
I'm not in
maybe that's not the right word.
Say that.
Maybe that's the right word. That's the wrong word I wanted to say. But I'm trying to make sense, trying to understand what you're saying, because you're talking about convergence of interest. Because you're using confluences to make your decision. That if it's a general election, so the energy of chaos is distributed, so it's easy to manage. But when it's off-cycle election, like one election, aggregated chaos can be very terrifying, and so you need that level of mobilization. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. And doing this mobilization, certain funds were spent, but it's not as huge as what people think, because there is no Anambra State the hotel rooms in Anambra State I don't think they are up to 5,000 rooms. So that means all the officers that are here have not been lodged in a hotel. By our training, we stay in camps. As a commissioner of police, I sleep on the road by our training. So we sleep in camps, we sleep in schools, we sleep in any type of building. Whether you come for election or not, your monthly salary will still be paid, and it is still being paid. You know, but when you go out for special duties, there are certain allowances that you are entitled to. This is as a result of, instead of feeding you, it's called ration, dry ration. It is monetized. It is not something huge. Maybe it's going to be for 3, 4, 5 days.
All right, I'm going to come to you, Mr. Pele. We'll segue to that now. But I want to get a thought from him, then I'll come to you. So, but just hold that so you don't forget, so you build from there. The election is not over, so let's be clear. In fact, knowing how politics works, the election is really happening right now. This is where the real election happens. The people have done theirs, then the politicians will now do theirs. Whether we like it or not, it happens. So what is the police doing to make sure that, look, whatever happened at the polling unit this morning stays that way?